Actually, I think all of us have been carrying around those heavy burdens lately. I talk with parents. A lot of parents, just there's so much going on, just feeling kind of overwhelmed sometimes. And people who are working in their jobs and people who are looking for jobs, they too, it's just kind of an overwhelming time. And caregivers, they're exhausted. And I think a lot of us are feeling anxious and worried with all these changes. Things change every day, all the uncertainties that we're dealing with right now. And we also have that extra weight of grief. Grief for the loss of relationships, the loss of what was normal, the loss of control. Yeah. Even talking with family and friends who have different opinions, strong opinions from us, that can just put a strain on that relationship. And all of that it adds a lot on our shoulders, and it makes us vulnerable to what is called burnout and compassion fatigue. A recent survey found that Americans are unhappier now than we have been in the last 50 years. And being a Christian, living out our Christian life right now, that's not easy either, because it goes against the world's plans. Both John the Baptist, who was Jesus' cousin, and Jesus were rejected. They were put to death by the powerful rulers of the world, who accused John the Baptist of being possessed, rather than listen to his warnings against greed and lust and unfaithfulness. And they accused Jesus of being a glutton, a drinker, a friend of sinners, because he ate and drank with people that they considered outcasts. He didn't follow their exclusive rules about curing the sick people that the leaders wouldn't even touch. And he washed the feet of his followers like a servant would. He offered living water to a woman that everyone else avoided, and he healed the child of a woman who was from a different race and a different faith. Even back then, those who misused power tried to discredit people of faith and integrity. But Jesus said, wisdom is vindicated by her deeds. Jesus' deeds have shown real power, lasting power. He is wisdom. He is truth personified. And we can confidently say, along with the psalmist, the Lord is gracious and merciful, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love. He holds up those who are falling, and he raises those who are bowed down. And though you might not show it on the outside, you might be feeling kind of bowed down right now. Kind of like some days you're just falling apart. Like there's a loss of meaning right now. Or maybe you're just feeling really guilty or really critical or defeated. Or like everything depends on you. My friends, those are warning signs that you might be getting burned out. And you know what? You are not alone in feeling this. But it is time to ask, how do I find my way back? And that's the good news. Jesus is the way back to life. Right now, you are in God's presence, and you can let your burdens down. You can find your way back to your true self, to God, to your family, to your friends, loving yourself and others, just as God already loves you. Listen, hear a word of peace today for your body, for your soul. The Old Testament prophet Zechariah preached that God can free us from that pit and return us to a strong hold of hope. Right now you're in the presence of the one who can stop the battle and command peace. Jesus' Holy Spirit is in this place. It's in you now. So let your weariness and your worries roll off your shoulders onto Christ. Go ahead. Just let your shoulders drop. Let your shoulders drop. Close your eyes if you want. Come to me, Jesus says, you who are weary, you who are carrying heavy burdens, come to me, and I will give you rest. With Jesus at your side, we can navigate the changes and the unknowns. In his strength, we can wrestle down the fears and the anger and the conflicts. We can be comforted even when grief catches us unawares. Come and see. Jesus invites you, his disciple, to just sit in his presence for a while. This week, when you need that, when you just kind of feel stuff building up again, sit in Jesus' presence for a while and remember his words, come to me, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke, Jesus says, and learn from me. The yoke in Jesus' day, and I know a lot of you already know this, but it was a heavy collar of wood. And it had leather straps. It was placed on the back of the oxen to help them work together to plow the fields. Jesus invites you to take that heavy yoke that's been on your shoulders, that yoke with all the expectations of perfection, all the shoulds that leave you feeling like you'll never be good enough. You can replace that heavy yoke with the yoke of Jesus' grace. It's light. You are good enough. And he wraps you in this yoke that lets you know that actually in your weakness even, in your vulnerabilities, in your brokenness, Jesus' strength in you will be perfect. You can replace that heavy yoke that constantly reminds you of past mistakes with the yoke of Jesus' forgiveness. When we accept and confess, like the Apostle Paul said, that sin is in us, Jesus forgives us. The truth is, we can't always do things right. The very things I don't want to do, the things I know I shouldn't do, the things I know I shouldn't say, those are the things I do, Paul admits, and we're all the same. Wretched person that I am, he says, for all of us, who can rescue me from this body of sin and death? Well, no one on earth, including you, can take away the sin that kills relationships. Only Jesus has the eternal power to rescue us. Taking our sin away on the cross once and for all. Let Jesus take that heavy yoke off your shoulders and off your mind and your heart today. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me. I'm gentle. I am humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Jesus' yoke is Christian obedience. I wear this because this stole it's a yoke that pastors wear. And I've seen some of you have ones like this at different times in your life. We have that yoke of obedience to follow Jesus' commands to love in all our relationships. And with the help of the Holy Spirit, with support of our family, with our friends, we can make the changes we need this week to restore our life. You can start, if you haven't already, those spiritual practices, like I mentioned before, just sitting with Jesus, listening to his words, letting those just flow over you like living water. There are other practices, other exercises that can strengthen your body and your soul and help you to see what you do have control over. You can protect yourself. You can put some healthy limits, some boundaries around your physical, your emotional, your spiritual life. You don't have to do those things that bring you down. Putting on Jesus' yoke isn't something that you need to take on alone either. As your family of God, we can bear the yoke, that load with you. If you don't have someone to talk with, then talk with us. Talk with us, your family of God. You know what? We're all a work in progress in this area. Jesus taught us that the burden he asks us to carry is light, and it's a burden that we carry with and for each other. We at First Lutheran Church, we are yoked together in the mission that God has given us for this specific time. It's time to let Jesus remind you how much you are loved and to restore your peace and your joy. Come to me, he says, all of you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest for your soul. Amen.